Have you ever known complete, all-encompassing darkness? I haven't. The darkness I have known is the darkness of distant porch lights, of far-off stars, or of holding the arm of a trusted friend, guiding my way with a flashlight. As I sift through my visions of darkness, I am aware of my struggle to see the dark as described by the Torah. The dark that God spreads over Egypt as a divine plague. Lo ra'u ish et achiv, velo kamu ish mitachtav shloshet yamim, ulechol b'nei Yisrael haya or b'moshvotam. Since this is a plague of darkness that none of us have ever known, our Torah teaches us three things to help us see the dark that covered Egypt. 1, it was impossible to see through. 2, it was impossible to move through. 3, despite its power, the children of Israel had light. Number 1, it was impossible to see. It is easy to take for granted that darkness would result in our Egyptian neighbors not being able to see each other. But our Torah is more specific. Lo ra'u ish et achiv. A man could not see his brother. This darkness is relational and graphic. I can picture them now. 2 siblings, each thinking of the other, each wanting desperately to be connected. Maybe they are sad or lonely or fearful or joyful, and they are longing for another person to share it with. Struggling under the weight of this darkness, each person would have been utterly alone. Uncertain of where their loved ones were in this chaos, each person would have been forced to imagine the worst. Suddenly unable to see the people they cared for most, the people of Egypt would have reached out their hands. But the second thing our Torah teaches us about this plague of darkness is that it was too thick to move through. The people pressed under this darkness could not see their loved ones. They could not reach out to touch a fellow sufferer. They were frozen in space with no hope, no capacity to seek comfort, unseen and completely and utterly alone, except for one small chance to be witnessed that the Torah tells us when it teaches us the third and final thing about this darkness. Ulechol b'nei Yisrael hayaor b'moshvotam. All of the children of Israel had light in their communities. While the primordial chaos overwhelms Egypt outside and the divinely imposed loneliness torments Egypt within, the children of Israel are huddled in the light and the warmth of each other's company. This light feels almost cozy, if only they hadn't been witnessing a plague. Just outside their windows, the darkness torments their neighbors, and the children of Israel are watching. These people pressed under debilitating darkness, otherwise unseen and utterly alone, in this moment, standing at the edge of their own freedom, but still powerless and very much enslaved, the children of Israel see the Egyptians in their suffering. I am taking the time to unravel these verses because I want us to see them. I want us to sit in the profound randomness and gratitude, and even a little bit of guilt. Knowing that we got out of Egypt and not everyone else did. I want us to know what it was like for our enslaved ancestors on the precipice of their own freedom to witness the people of Egypt in their darkness. Only when we are ready to witness can we see the depth of devastation brought by the final plague. When the darkness turned to dawn, the worst fears of the Egyptians were realized. In the darkness, it was the absence of connection. It was the loneliness and the longing that plunged the people of Egypt into a dark of their worst fears. But it was the dawn, the eventual dissipation of that darkness, the bright North African sun that lit up the world, revealing to the Egyptians that their worst fears had in fact come true. It was midnight under a starless sky when God enacted the final plague, the death of every Egyptian firstborn. In this final act of torment, our Torah teaches us that every family lost someone. Every person cried out from the hole in their heart that death leaves behind. In the midst of this communal cry, with the children of Israel watching, our Torah does something incredible. Our Torah focuses in on one seemingly insignificant woman and witnesses her in her pain. Umit kol bachor be'eretz Mitzrayim mi bachor paro hayeshev al kiso ad bachor chashivcha asher achar harei chaim. Every firstborn in Egypt will die. From the firstborn of the Pharaoh who sits on his throne to the firstborn of the slave girl behind the millstones. This woman is not named, and as far as I know, she is never mentioned again. But our Torah remembers her. And in doing so, our Torah teaches us 3 things about this woman's life that would have otherwise gone unseen. Number 1, she is a slave. If we ever thought we were the only slaves in Egypt, if we ever thought that we were the only people who have ever suffered unjustly, Exodus 11:5 comes to teach us gently we were wrong. This Egyptian mother who wakes to find her firstborn dead is perhaps the person in Egypt that the children of Israel would have related to most closely. She is our co-slave. Set to the same menial tasks one workstation away, we would have talked with her, told stories of our growing children, walked the same direction home at the end of the day. Even though we relate to her, our empathy does not protect her. In this moment, God is saving us. God is not saving her. The second thing our Torah teaches about this woman is that she is the person who grinds our flour. Hidden behind a millstone day after day, she would have spent her life walking in a circle, pushing one heavy stone over another, grinding wheat into flour, all for the early thankless stages of baking bread. Even we, who imbue such liberative significance in the bread that we packed up hastily as we fled our own slavery, even we who called this bread matzah, the bread of our suffering and the bread of our liberation, even we can forget where the flour comes from. But Parshat Bo cycles back every year to remind us that the matzah, the symbol of our own freedom, did not come into being without the suffering of another. In its inclusion of her memory, the Torah teaches us the third, final, and perhaps the most profound thing about this woman's life. In her unimaginable pain, this one woman's suffering becomes just as important as Pharaoh's. In her suffering, all hierarchy is dismantled. Her slave status, her womanness, her profound powerlessness all fade to the background through the strength of her cry. Our Torah does not offer a superfluity of women. When we do encounter women's voices in our text, we know they are important. We know that we cannot cast them aside as detail. Every year when we read this parsha, we become like the children of Israel holding light to the final plagues. We have the sacred privilege of witnessing this woman in her suffering. The Talmud reports a teaching in the name of Rabbi Eliezer. The Torah reminds us 36 times not to oppress the stranger. These 36 mentionings also mention our experience of slavery in Egypt, so that this memory of our trauma will keep us from enacting these same horrors on someone else. But the words of our Torah this week convey a different message. Remember the exodus from Egypt, but also remember the darkness, which was not yours. Remember the suffering that you witnessed. Remember the cry of the woman who lived out her slavery with you, who you were powerless to protect from the darkness and the death. Write her story down and speak it aloud every year so that you will remember the suffering that you witnessed, so that you will remember how powerless you felt when you heard her wrenching cry and could offer no relief. Over and over in our liturgy, every year at our Seder tables, and for weeks in a row as we read through Exodus, we return to the story of our experience of slavery, of our redemption from suffering, of God's presence in our lives as the source of our salvation. This story is foundational to who we are theologically, and it is foundational to how we relate to other people. To others suffering throughout history, we hold this story close. But we often forget to remember the moment when the children of Israel were safe in their houses, bathing in the warm light and witnessing the desolation of their neighbors. the powerful ones and the weakest. In 2 short verses, Parshat Bo reminds us that it is not merely our task to remember the Exodus. It is also our responsibility to witness the suffering of others and to ask ourselves, who might we be when we remember their stories and hold them as dearly as we hold our own? Thank you. I want you to know how truly grateful I am for you all to be here to witness my experience of achievement and vulnerability. I feel incredibly loved. In a moment, we will rise together, concluding this ritual with Kaddish D'Rabbanan, the holiness prayer for the rabbis. If you are saying Kaddish to remember a loved one, please join me on page 13. And together we will rise in body or spirit. Yitkadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah, Bi'alma dibrach hirute, V'yamich malchute, B'chayechon uvyomechon, Uvchaye dechol Beit Yisrael, Bagala uvizman kariv vimru, Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevorach le'olam omei omaya, Yitbarach v'yishapach v'yitpa'ar v'yitramam v'yitnaseh, v'yithadar v'yithale v'yithalal, shmei dekudsha berechu, le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata, tushbechata v'ne'emata, Damiran be'alma v'imru, Amen. Al Yisrael ve'al Rabbanan ve'al Tamidei Chon, ve'al kol Tamidei Chon, ve'al kol ma'an de'askin be'araita, di be'atra hadain di b'chol atar ve'atar, yechei lachon u'lachon, shlama rabba china ve'hizda ve'rachamin, ve'charichin arichin u'mizonei aricha. Ufarkano min kodam avuchon di bishmaya v'imru, Amen. Yehi shlama rabba min shemaya, v'chaim tovim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen. Osei shalom b'mromav, hu brachamav osei shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'imru, Amen.